Chapter 12. Across the Taren. Lan tells the group to dismount and lead their horses. They follow him through the thinning fog, trusting that he knew where he was going. Rand overhears Moraine telling Lan, "You must handle it. He will remember too much as it is. If I stand out in his thoughts..." He doesn't catch the rest of what's said. Dwelling on how miserable he was feeling, he finds the group have stopped at a wooden dock and sees the Taren River is wide enough that with the fog he can't see the opposite bank. Lan tells the boys to come and stand with him. He throws back Perrin's cloak to reveal his battle axe, and half understanding, Rand removes his cloak aside to reveal the heron-marked sword. 6 men carrying torches wearing rough clothes appear with Master Hightower. The ferryman was examining them, as if looking for a trap. Lan leans back against his horse in apparent casualness, but one hand rests on his sword hilt. Rand tries to emulate the warder, and Perrin plays with the loop holding his axe. Matt has his hands on his quiver, and Tom Merrilin makes a show of twirling his daggers between his fingers. Egwene claps and Moraine laughs as if it was an actual performance. Hightower isn't amused though, pointing out they've mentioned more payment for the crossing, and the coin Lan had paid him is in a safe place. Lan tells him that the rest of the gold will be given once they're across the river. The ferryman nods and orders his haulers to ready the ferry. The party lead their horses onto the deck, and the haulers begin to pull on the ropes to heave the craft across the river. The landing dock begins to disappear, and Rand stands with Lan asking, "Would they really have tried to rob us?" Hightower looked more afraid we would rob him. Lan replies, "With fog to hide their actions, who knows? I'm surprised you asked though. I've heard the way you Emmonsfielders speak about Taren ferry folk." Rand tells him, "I've never really thought that there was any truth to it. He might tell the Fade we crossed. He might bring the Trollocs over." Lan chuckles, saying, "Robbing someone is very different to dealing with a half-man. Can you really see him ferrying Trollocs over? In this fog? No matter how much gold was offered. Say no more now. These are bad days to talk about Shadowspawn where strangers can hear. It could bring worse than the Dragon's Fang." When the ferry bumps into the dock on the north bank, Hightower immediately demands his coin. Moraine tells him it will be paid, along with a silver mark for each of the haulers for the quick crossing. They disembark from the ferry, clattering onto the dock. Moraine walks further up the bank with Lan, so Hightower and his men must leave the ferry to collect their payment. As Lan hands out the coin, a loud crack rings out, and Hightower looks up sharply. The dock groans, then wood and ropes begin to snap with a thunderous crack. Hightower shouts, "The ferry is loose! Get it, you fools!" There was nothing the haulers could do. The ferry was spinning in the middle of the river, faster and faster. A rope still attached to the landing begins to tear more of the wood from the dock. "Whirlpool!" one of the haulers cries. Hightower insists there have never been whirlpools on the Taren, as Moraine tells him it's an unfortunate occurrence. Lan tells Hightower that he won't be taking anyone across for some time, then hands him a bigger pouch of coins, telling him this is to compensate for the loss of his craft. Hightower snatches the pouch and runs off into the mist, his haulers following. Rand stares at the river, thinking this was no coincidence, then follows the others up the road where the fog had almost completely stopped. Looking back, he can see a line along the riverbank, with fog on one side and clear air on the other. Moraine says, "It follows the river as if drawn by a pen. There are not 10 women in the White Tower who could do that unaided, not to mention from the back of a horse." Tom asks if it would be better if the fog kept them hidden all the way to Baerlon. Moraine responds, "Drakkar are fearsome and dangerous, yes, but not very clever. It will tell the Fade that this side of the river is clear, but the river itself is covered in mist. The Fade will know what effort this has taken me, and will assume we travel along the river. He will eventually think it a ruse, but he'll have to split his forces to make sure both routes are covered. I could extend the fog all the way to Baerlon instead, but then the Drakkar would only need a few hours to search the river, and the Fade would know exactly where we were headed." Matt tries to ask what happened to the ferry and why. Moraine points out that they want explanations for everything, but if she tells them, they won't have time for anything else. They just need to know she intends to get them to Tar Valon safely. Lan says they need to leave or the Drakkar won't need to search for them, then walks off up the riverbank. They follow and find that Lan had set up a camp days before in a hollow underneath some tree roots where they can have a fire and rest. Moraine says she will see to everyone's fatigue, but first she wants to talk with Egwene. Ran watches the two women walk toward the hideout while he helps settle the horses. Perrin remarks that the horses don't look as if they need a rest, but is corrected by Lan, who explains. They do need rest. They'll run as fast as they can, right up to the second they drop dead, never feeling their exhaustion. I would prefer it wasn't necessary for Moraine to do it, and they must go easy now for the next few days until they recover. Mat asks if that's what she intends to do to them. Rand thinks on how he doesn't want the power used on him, and how the Aes Sedai practically admitted to sinking the ferry. The cries of the Drakkar echo from downriver, coming closer and closer, until they start to fade away upriver. Lan says they're lucky it's searching the river, then tells the boys to go inside the hideaway to eat and rest. They crawl through the tunnel opening, finding what looks like a cave under the tree roots, big enough for all of them. The women were sat by the fire facing each other. Moraine was telling Egwene, "The one power comes from the true source, the driving force of creation, the force the Creator made to turn the wheel of time. Saidin, the male half, and Saidar, the female half, work against each other whilst also together to provide that force. Saidin is now fouled by the touch of the Dark One, like rancid oil on water. Saidin itself is still pure, but cannot be touched without also touching the taint. Saidar is still safe to use." Egwene was leaning forward, eager to listen, while the other men act as if they didn't want to hear. Egwene asked Moraine if she really thinks she can learn and become an Aes Sedai, her face shining with excitement. Rand thought she'd never looked so beautiful, yet so far away. Banging his head in alarm at her question, Tom takes his arm, telling him not to be a fool. She's beyond him now. Moraine tells her, "Only a few can learn, each to different degrees. You are one of a handful who doesn't have to learn to touch the true source. Touching it would come to you regardless, whether you want it or not. Without the teachings of the White Tower, though, you may never learn to fully channel, and may not survive. Men born with the ability to touch Saidin die, if the Red Ajah do not gentle them first." Tom growls deep in his throat at the last remark, and Rand shifts uncomfortably. He'd only heard of 3 such men in his life, and thankfully never in the 2 rivers. But the damage they caused before the Aes Sedai found them was always bad enough for the news to carry, such as wars and earthquakes. He wasn't clear on what the different Ajahs of Aes Sedai did, except one. Everyone knew that the Red Ajah hunted down those men and gentled them, preventing a repeat of the breaking of the world. Moraine goes on, "Most women die trying to learn without a guide. The women we don't find yet survive usually become what's called wisdoms of villages. The old blood is strong in Emmonsfield. I knew what you were the moment I saw you. No Aes Sedai can stand in the presence of another woman who can channel, or is close to her change and not feel it." She brings out a chain with the blue gem she'd worn when Rand first met her. "You are close to your change, your first touching of the true source. It is better if I guide you through it. That way you stand a better chance of avoiding the unpleasant effects of those who learn alone." Egwene asks if the gem has the power, and Moraine snaps, "Of course not. Items do not have the power. Even Angreal are only tools. This is just a pretty blue stone that can give off light. Here." She places the gem in Egwene's palms, then places her hands on either side of the girl's head. She tells Egwene, "Look at the stone and clear your minds of everything but it. Let yourself drift. There is only the stone and the emptiness. Drift and let me guide you." All the while Rand digs his fingers into his knees, wishing that Egwene would fail, as light bloomed from the stone, making him flinch. Another flash, then another, and Rand tells himself it's the Aes Sedai's doing, not Egwene's. One last feeble flash, and then the stone was just a gem again. Egwene says she thought she felt something, but maybe Moraine is mistaken about her. Moraine was smiling though, and tells Egwene that she wasn't mistaken. That last flash was Egwene's. At first the girl is elated, then deflates, saying the flash was barely there. Moraine chides her. "Most who come to Tar Valon study months before being able to do what you just did. You may go far, maybe even to the Amelin seat, if you study and work hard. With a cry of delight, Egwene throws her arms around Moraine, thanking her. Turning to Ran, she says, "Ran, did you hear? I'm going to be an Aes Sedai." Thanks for listening. Please like, share and subscribe and help get a new channel off the ground. Thank you.